Returning for another visit to the famous Roundtable Show is, luckily for us, is U.S. Congressman from the 10th District, Paul Mitchell.
Hi, Paul.
Welcome
good to see you.
back. Nice
It's good to be
you,
back.
sir.
It's good to be home for a little bit.
Yeah, you've had a really busy time since January 20th.
Yeah.
And a fun time, an exciting time. Been to the White House a number of times.
Yes, we have.
Bring us up to date on what's happening.
Well, probably, the most important thing that's happening right now is we're getting ready to undertake tax reform in the fall. We obviously have to deal with appropriations, keep the government operating. October 1's the new fiscal year. We're probably going to end up with a continuing resolution, which isn't the ideal answer, but we can't get it all done by then. And we're going to have to tackle the debt ceiling because we're at the debt ceiling. We're going to have to address that and address that in some way that deals with what we're spending, because we can't keep spending our way into oblivion. That's what we're doing if we don't deal with our deficits. So those are big things alone. Never mind healthcare, which I'm sure we're going to talk about.
Right.
So there's a lot going on.
And you're really in the heart of it, aren't you? What committees are you on?
I'm on Education and Workforce, which by fall we're going to start working on reauthorizing the Higher Education Act, which funds higher education, colleges, universities, all that type of thing. Transportation infrastructure. We have an FAA reauthorization bill, including privatizing air traffic control out, that hopefully will hit the floor of the House when we get back. And then oversight government reform, where we're dealing with a variety of government management issues, which is some days interesting, some days exasperating, but that's part of the deal. And as you know, we've talked about before, I'm the freshman representative to leadership, which means that on a weekly basis I meet with leadership, Paul Ryan, Kevin McCarthy, the leadership of the House.
That's wonderful that you have that opportunity.
It's a great honor, and it's also a responsibility, which adds to the workload, but that's the deal you get when you get there,
Your Washington representative, Ann, has sent me press releases since the last time you were here, and I thought we'd go through a few of them. One of them was a great one, was just announced the other day, that the DTE plant spending $1 billion in East China Township.
That's great investment by DTE in two things, both in this community. Creates about a little over 500 construction jobs, 35, 40 full-time jobs long term, but it also helps with improving the reliability of electric power here in the whole region. So it's a nice investment to have from DTE, and we're pleased that they chose to come here.
Brandon Road study. I was not familiar with that, but tell me about it.
Well, you're aware of the Asian carp issue,
right?
Which is a huge concern in the Great Lakes. They've overtaken a lot of their waterways, Mississippi River, the Ohio River. They've really overtaken it. There's a study done by the Corps of Engineers about could they put a lock at Brandon Road to stop the Asian carp.
Where's Brandon Road?
It's in border of Illinois, Indiana. It's down the long way there.
Down that way.
That would stop Asian carp from being able to progress north. That literally the water would never come that way. They did a study on what the best way to control that is, and they've been sitting on the study. Hasn't been released. It's supposed to be released in February, and there's a lot of politics involved because folks are concerned about barge traffic down the river and all that. My response is let's get the study out and see what they say and what the options are. We've already paid for it. We've already done it. So I put in an amendment to the appropriations bills to hold money from the Corps of Engineers if they didn't release it. Has a pretty direct conversation with Appropriations Chair. And to his credit, I mean, he was supportive. He talked to the Army Corps of Engineers and said, guys, this is going to keep coming up until we fix this. Let's study out. Then let's deal with what they say is our options and the politics and not put our head in the sand. Asian carp, if they get into the Great Lakes, they will expand very rapidly and they will take over the ecosystem. They'll destroy our recreational fishing.
The big industry.
And recreational boating is endangered. We need to address it, and being ignorant is not the answer. So we're progress. I'm pleased with it. And August 7th, we'll see what the Army Corps says about it.
Okay. One that's been in the news, and I know you've done an awful lot of work on it, and so did Candace Miller when she was around, was Selfridge Air Force Base.
Oh, the F-35s, absolutely. Well, Selfridge in terms of their maintenance needs, which has been an ongoing issue, as well as the future of the base and the F-35. We did a joint letter with the Michigan delegation to the Secretary of the Air Force, indicating our support for the F-35. Selfridge has huge advantages for the Air Force. It's the only of the 5 bases being considered, I understand, that has never had noise complaints in the community about jets flying either. It's embraced by the community as a whole. It's a huge employment driver in Macomb County in southeast Michigan. We also recognize down there that it's a big part of national security. So it's got that. There's access to a huge airspace in northern Lake Huron that it doesn't exist anywhere else in the United States.
That's correct.
Commercial traffic's not there. And we've got the range in Grayling, that's one of the largest ranges in the United States. So there's real advantages for Selfridge. Never mind the air wing there. They just got an award last year as one of the best National Guard air wing in the United States. We've got trained personnel, costs are relatively low compared to other bases, and it's been embraced by the community.
Who's our competition?
And I got to go through the 4. There's one in Wisconsin. I'm sorry, I don't remember the other.
But there's 3 or 4 others that are.
There's 5 bases total. They're going to
Okay.
put the F-35s in the next set squadron at 2. The other bases may well end up with the F-16s. So we'll see what they do. We want the F-35 at Selfridge. That's the future where the military is going. We also passed an appropriations bill right before we left for defense that included full funding for the F-35 at the level the Pentagon requested, which is additional F-35s, because that is the future for fighter aircraft. The A-10 is getting old, let's be honest about it, and as our other aircraft we have still operating in our system, we need to upgrade our aircraft.
When will the decision be made on Selfridge?
I think it's late fall, early winter, although in government, you know, there's a deadline, then there's things that happen, so we'll have to watch it. Oh, it's just, you know.
One of the ones you have been working hard on is air traffic control system. It's out of date, and you mentioned that at the top of the show.
Terribly out of date.
Where are we at on that?
Well, it's passed the committee. It's now, I think we'll go to the floor of the House here when we get back in September. 2 drivers on that. One is we need to do some things within the FAA in terms of certification of aircraft. We're still behind the curve compared to Europe in terms of the process for certifying aircraft, the time it takes, and we need to be competitive. We need to be competitive so companies like Boeing and those folks can compete and build aircraft here rather than build in Europe with Airbus. Everyone wants safe aircraft. Boeing wants safe aircraft. I certainly do. But we need to make sure we don't make that process burdensome on a bureaucratic level. That's one issue. For example, we recently came up with one thing on an aircraft in a 777 that they already use that exact thing on another aircraft. And a different certifier said, well, wait a minute, we need to look at this.
Why?
Well, exactly why. It doesn't make any sense. And that costs millions of dollars when you start that process. The other part of it is updating your air traffic control system. We're using radar towers from the 50s and 60s, if then. We've got facilities that are eligible for Social Security if they were alive, and we still use them, and it means that our air traffic control system is old. We end up with huge delays. And people think when we have a weather delay, the weather is causing the problem. Well, yes, the weather, but because of the weather, we're using radar, using old technology, we have to space aircraft further out, both departures, arrivals, and airspace, because we don't have precision determination where they're at. We've tried for years to get that done through the FAA. We spent about $50 billion. We had a hearing.
Drop in the bucket.
Oh, and then Washington, we had a hearing and asked the FAA what would it take to get this completed. They said, well, with another $30 billion,
Oh my God.
they'd hope to have something done in 10 years. Hope is not a plan. That is irresponsible. And we need to get that whole process, the whole acquisition process, out of the government with a private nonprofit. It is a nonprofit. It's a board that's made up of all users of the system. Everyone has a stake in it. It's a balanced board so no one can take control. So people have been concerned, well, the airlines will take over. Well, no, that can't happen. It's a board that consists of all users of the airspace, cargo, general aviation, charter aircraft, right, air traffic controllers. It has support from air traffic controllers. It has support from the flight attendants. It has the pilots. Most
Would the
airlines.
military be on the board too?
The military would not be on the board, although the Department of Transportation appoints 2 people. And the reality is there's a whole mechanism, even more sophisticated than back in 9/11, that they have to take over the airspace to do that. It worked in 9/11.
Right.
And we were unprepared then.
Right.
We certainly are better prepared now if we had to deal with a national emergency.
Okay. One of your strengths before you became a congressman was in education. And you had a company called Ross Medical.
Yep.
Ross Education.
Ross Education, sure.
And now you've got a bill strengthening career and tech education. Talk to me about that.
Well, we put a bill in place to require, it's called the College Transparency Act, to require all post-secondary institutions release some pretty straightforward information that's readily accessible about their outcomes. Because post-secondary education is an investment by families and individuals in their career futures. So what's your likelihood of completing successfully, graduating? What's the likelihood of getting a job in the field? What's your earnings, average earnings in that field? What's it cost you to really go to school there? Those basic kinds of information. Try to find that out if you want to go to a particular program at a university. Find out what their graduation rate is for that program, not the overall university. And there's a huge difference in the rates of graduation and placement from, say, the nursing program somewhere and the architecture program. Both placement, training related, all of that. You need to know that because it's the largest investment that families will make, in many cases larger than their homes, is the investment to help their children have a career. And as I told my staff until they're sick or tired of hearing it, you can find out more information about the reliability of a washer and dryer than you can find out about the likelihood of success from a major investment in post-secondary education, and that's unconscionable, both for individuals, the taxpayers are paying for it in colleges and universities, and they don't know what the taxpayers are getting for it. The other comment I'd make for you is that there's not been an employer I have visited since I took office, anywhere in the county, anywhere in the district. I was up in Sandusky this week. They're having the same problem, finding people, skilled people in occupations, career and technical occupations to fill jobs. I was with a supplier for the F-35 program in Macomb County yesterday. They supply tooling for the wings and a whole series of things for F-35. And they're having trouble. They have trouble finding skilled people that want technical jobs. Lapeer Industries had the same problem when I was there earlier with them. They do a lot of defense work as well. And if we don't have those people, we're going to lose jobs, not only just in this district, but in this country. Jobs, things are going to go overseas because they can't find skilled labor. Mm-hmm. And young people don't know about the opportunities that are there in career and technical education fields because simply the information gets lost.
Okay. A couple hot button items. One of them that does affect this district pretty high, which is immigration.
Sure does.
Because of vegetables and things along those lines. The president just came out a couple days ago with some new thoughts on that. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think there's two things. What the president's proposing does not talk about eliminating the labor program, H-2A, H-2B, those types of programs that allow people to come in the country legally to work, farm jobs, hospitality jobs, those types of jobs. And I haven't seen anything that eliminates those.
When are you going to reduce it by 50% or something, though?
Not that I know of.
It'll be coming out in the wash.
Eventually, we have to deal with that issue, and we have to make it so that it's routine, it's smooth, so that businesses can function. Because there are agriculture outfits that are having real struggle getting labor this year.
Right.
Finding anybody to work in the fields, working with their jobs. The other part of the bill that I think makes a great deal of sense is reforming our immigration system. I talked about it during the campaign. What they're talking about is having a merit-based system for any in the country. If you're part of the nuclear family, great, come on, join your family. If you're not, then what skills do you bring to the country that you can contribute economically and support yourself? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what I talked about in the campaign. I think it's necessary. Our immigration model is outdated. And as a result, we're causing problems in this country. And we need to pay attention to it. And we need to be careful. We need to understand, look what's happening in Europe. Look what's happening in Europe, right? By having an immigration system that's basically open borders. And there are countries now seriously looking at the impact of that.
Okay. Then the big topic.
You mean there's only one big topic?
No, there's a million big topics.
These days lately.
But the big topic this hour, this week.
Okay.
As I mentioned to you before we started, I heard a report today by U.S. Representative Martha McSally, who's from Arizona.
Yep.
She's working with 43 other Congress people, 50% Republican, 50% Democratic, on working together to try and come up with a health care plan. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think having a bipartisan effort and having the Senate and the House work together would be great. If, in fact, the Senate had simply sent the bill that they had, their, quote, skinny repeal bill, whatever that turned out to be, sent that to conference, passed that bill, it would have gone to conference committee. The conference committee is a bipartisan group, Senate Republicans and Democrats, bicameral, both houses, would have sat down and gone through the bill and what do we need to do that makes sense so we can pass this in both houses that will make a difference. I'm incredibly disappointed that we didn't get any support to do that. Didn't get one Democrat to step up and say, okay, I'll vote yes so we can go to conference and see if it works. Because if they're unhappy with what comes out of the conference committee, they could have voted against it. Mm-hmm. Take it to the next step, have that process. That would have at least been an attempt to contribute to the process and fix it. They chose not to. So while I'm certainly hopeful that we can get something in the House that is bipartisan, we'll wait and see. But from my perspective, we can't take a bill that just puts a Band-Aid on the current system, throws money at it, and say, well, we'll look at it in a couple of years. That's why the repeal bill in the Senate was not one that I supported because it was repeal it 2 years from now.
No.
Well, the check's in the mail, okay?
Right.
We have a problem now. It's a significant problem. It's only going to get worse. And the idea of taking the pressure off, the heat off on this, and say, well, we'll kind of put a Band-Aid on it, we'll play around it, and then we'll deal with it later. No. The Congress is well known for kicking the can down the road, and Lord knows some have done that longer than others over there. Enough can kicking. We need to fix the problem. We need to get a backbone, have some courage, and deal with it, and stop talking about, well, we'll kind of tinker with it. It's a problem.
It's got to be frustrating for you, after been in business and successful business for so many years, to be able to have negotiated with people when you were running your business and get things done, and then come to Washington and have all this gridlock.
Well, I think First, you have to, a couple of things. You have to recognize that there's a great deal that is done that just doesn't hit the national media, it doesn't hit the 24-hour news because they like drama. That gets some ratings. 85% of what's done is done on a bipartisan basis. Lots of things get done that way.
Okay.
It is frustrating some days, but the frustration, you've got to learn to adapt. I mean, in business, I was successful to say, okay, what's the environment you're dealing with?
Right.
How does it work? And have the biggest impact you can on it. No one can go to Congress or any other institution and say, it's going to work like I think it should. That's self-centered, naive. Make it work within the system to make it work. The biggest frustration is, or maybe two, one is people that will say one thing and do another. Paul, if I tell you I decide I'm going to vote on that issue, or that's what I believe, that's what I'm going to do. Because I think your words should be your bond on those things. Unfortunately, some people don't operate from that perspective. It's very disappointing. The other thing that's disappointing is that folks that can't muster enough intestinal fortitude to deal with the tough problems and take a vote. We talked when I ran for office that I was running to make a difference, to do the job, and I told people in detail what things I would do. You can't govern by a poll. You
Right.
can't govern by what's this do to my chances to run for re-election or to go from the House to the Senate. That's not leadership. Leadership is not worrying about whether or not you keep enough votes to stay in your job. Lead on the issue, and then sell what you've done as being the best thing. Some people don't do that, and that's frustrating. I think that had an influence in the Senate, and that's unfortunate. I know it had an influence in some of the House. I say the same thing to them. I have said it to them. Man up.
Right. Okay. Well, there's also some positive things happening. That you are in the paper this week, in the Voice newspaper.
That was fun.
This was with a young lady from the district. Talk to me about this. You won a contest?
Well, every year there's an art contest that's done by Congress. We had a huge number of entries. And we had independent judges. We didn't do it ourselves. We had better have people that are artists
Right.
do the judging. They selected that as the winner. And the most fun is then we scheduled for her and her family to come out. There's a big reception there.
Wonderful.
So you'll see there's a picture there where a picture in the house we did with her, and their family came in and visited, which was nice. So it was a good time. Great artists, lots of great artwork there, and it was a fun evening. We had a good time visiting and talking with parents and their kids. And that's the fun part of the job.
It's been 8 months now since you've been there, and give us some final thoughts on your 8 months.
It is an incredibly busy and focused effort. There's a lot that needs to be done, and it's why I think I've spent, including weekends, all 4 weeks back in the district, because we've been back and forth that intensively, much more intensely than it's been done in a lot of years. We've gotten some things accomplished, and some things we're still working on. Like for healthcare, with remember the Affordable Care Act took 15 months to pass, with a great deal of pain, suffering, gnashing of teeth, and yelling. We've been working on this for 7 months. We're going to keep working on it. Same thing in terms of tax reform. It's going to take us a real effort. I think we'll get something done in the fall in the House on tax reform and send it to the Senate. We have to continue to work on those things. It's been 30 years since we undertook major tax reform. These are big challenges, and we tackle these and get these things done. I'll be thrilled to have accomplished a huge number of things in the first year and a half in Congress that have been major undertakings. That's why I went there, and I'm happy to go do it. Some days it's tiring, but that's the deal.
Thank you very much for telling us and stopping
Paul.
by.
It's
And,
good to see you, as
seeing
always.
us, and we'll have you back again soon. And
Anytime.
keep doing a good job for the district.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Thanks much. That's about it for this edition of the Roundtable. Till next time, I'm Paul Dingeman. See you soon.